"Sir, the President of the United States would like to personally meet you." The Secret Service agent wasn't talking to my adoptive father, he was talking to me, the man in the server's uniform, the son they threw away. "Sir, the President of the United States would like to personally meet you." Those words stopped everything. Every conversation in the marble ballroom went silent. Every champagne glass paused midair. Every camera turned. Every breath held. Because the Secret Service agent in his crisp black suit and coiled earpiece wasn't talking to my adoptive father, Harlan Crowe, the man hosting this glittering charity gala in his multi-million-dollar Virginia estate. He wasn't talking to my adoptive brother, Sterling, who'd spent the last hour giving interviews about the Crowe family's philanthropic legacy and posing for photos with senators and tech billionaires. He was talking to me. Silas Brennan. The man in the server's uniform, holding a tray of champagne flutes, trying to stay invisible in the corner of the ballroom that used to be my home. You know what they say about karma? Sometimes it doesn't just knock on your door. Sometimes it lands on your front lawn in a private jet with the most powerful woman in the world as a passenger, and the love of your life walking beside her. But before I tell you how I got here, standing in this room full of people who threw me away like garbage, about to meet the president while my girlfriend changes everything I thought I knew about power and justice, I need to tell you where I came from. My name is Silas Brennan, and this is the story of how I went from being the unwanted adopted son thrown out with nothing but a box of letters, to standing in front of television cameras while the woman I love introduces me as her partner and the president shakes my hand. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong? Like no matter how hard you tried, how perfect you were, how much you sacrificed, you were always going to be the outsider? If you have, then this story is for you. If you've ever spent your life trying to earn love from people who had already decided you weren't worth it, make sure you stay until the end. Because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family, power, and what it means to finally be seen. Let me start 6 months earlier, back when I still believed that if I just tried hard enough, stayed quiet enough, achieved enough, I could finally earn my place in the Crowe family. I was 7 years old when Harlan and Iris Crowe adopted me from foster care. Iris told me she'd fallen in love with my bright eyes and the way I could solve math problems that stumped kids twice my age. Harlan told me I was lucky. That the Crowe name meant something in Virginia, in Washington, in the circles where power wasn't loud, it was inherited, quiet, and absolute. I thought I was the luckiest boy in the world. Crowe Manor was everything I'd dreamed of during my 4 years bouncing between foster homes. A bedroom bigger than most apartments. Bookshelves that reached the ceiling. A sprawling estate with gardens that seemed to go on forever. An older brother, Sterling, who I imagined would teach me how to be strong. A younger sister, Cora, who might actually like me. Iris was everything I'd hoped for in a mother. She read to me every night. She helped me with homework. She came to every academic award ceremony, every debate competition, every moment that mattered. When I got a perfect score on the SATs, she cried and told me she'd never been more proud. "You're just as brilliant as Sterling," she whispered to me once, tucking me in even though I was 16 and too old for it. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." But even at 7, I wasn't blind. I could see the way Harlan's jaw tightened when Iris praised me. I could hear Sterling whispering to his prep school friends that I was the charity project. I could feel the weight of being different in a family where lineage was everything, where your last name wasn't just what people called you, it was who you were. The Crowes were old Virginia money. Political donors. Legacy builders. Their ancestors had shaken hands with presidents, shaped policy, built empires. And I was a foster kid from nowhere, with no history, no lineage, no right to the name they'd given me. Still, I believed love could overcome anything. Iris loved me. That felt like enough. So I threw myself into being perfect. Perfect grades. Perfect behavior. Perfect gratitude for every single thing they gave me. By the time I graduated high school, I was valedictorian, captain of the debate team, and had early admission to Georgetown with a full academic scholarship. I thought surely by then I'd proven I deserved to be a Crowe. I was wrong. The cracks had always been there, but I'd spent 21 years pretending I couldn't see them. Harlan never came to my graduations. Not high school. Not college. Sterling introduced me to his friends as the kid my parents took in, never as his brother. Cora was kind, but she was also careful, never defending me in front of Harlan, never pushing back when Sterling made cruel jokes at my expense. I told myself it didn't matter. As long as Iris was there, I had a place in this family. As long as she loved me, I belonged somewhere. I held on to that belief all through college. All through my master's program. All through the years of holiday dinners where I sat at the far end of the table, the years of family photos where I stood slightly apart, the years of being introduced as Iris's special project. Iris was my anchor. My proof that I mattered. And then, 6 months ago, she died. Sudden heart attack. No warning. One moment she was planning the Crowe Foundation gala, the next she was gone. I thought my heart would stop too. But I never imagined that losing Iris would mean losing everything else. The will reading happened 4 days after the funeral. I sat in the lawyer's office in Georgetown, still wearing the black suit Iris had bought me for job interviews, still believing that family meant something even in death. The estate went to Harlan. The investments were divided between Sterling and Cora. Iris's jewelry collection, her art, even her beloved library, distributed among her biological children. And to Silas Brennan, the lawyer continued, and my heart lifted slightly, desperately. Maybe she'd left me something. Some proof that I'd mattered to her. Iris Crowe leaves her personal correspondence collection, contained in one wooden box currently stored in the Manor's library. Letters. She left me letters. Sterling actually laughed. That's it? Just some old papers? I felt my face burn with humiliation, but I told myself that maybe there was something meaningful in those letters. Maybe Iris had left me words that would explain why she'd loved me when no one else could. I was still clinging to that hope 3 days later when Harlan knocked on my bedroom door at Crowe Manor, the room I'd lived in for 21 years, and told me I had until the end of the week to find somewhere else to live. This house belongs to the family now, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Iris is gone, and it's time for you to make your own way in the world. But I am family, I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. Harlan's expression didn't change. Didn't even flicker. You were Iris's project, Silas. You always were. We tolerated you because she wanted us to. But she's not here anymore. He paused at the door. It's time to stop pretending you belong here. That night, I sat alone in my room, soon to be someone else's room, and opened the wooden box Iris had left me. Inside were dozens of letters. Some in envelopes. Some loose and worn. My hands shook as I unfolded the first one. It was a letter I'd written to Iris when I was 8 years old, thanking her for adopting me and promising to make her proud. At the bottom, in her handwriting, she'd written, "You already make me proud. Every single day. Love, Mom." Every letter in that box was something I'd written to her over the years. Every thank you note. Every Mother's Day card. Every update from college about my classes, my dreams, my hope that I was becoming someone worthy of the Crowe name. She'd kept them all. Every single one. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by my own words, and realized she'd been holding on to me the whole time, even when I thought I was the one holding on to her. But at the very bottom of the box, beneath all my letters, I found something else. A sealed envelope with my name written in Iris's shaky handwriting. Dated 2 weeks before she died. My hands were trembling so badly I almost couldn't open it. But I did. And what I read inside that envelope, what Iris finally told me after 21 years of silence, would destroy everything I thought I knew about my adoption, my place in the Crowe family, and why Harlan had never, ever wanted me there. This is where my story really begins. But before I tell you what was in that letter, I need to know, are you still with me? Have you ever discovered a truth that reframed your entire life? Drop a comment below and let me know. Because what I found in Iris's letter didn't just change my past, it set in motion everything that would bring a private jet, the President of the United States, and the love of my life to the front lawn of the family that threw me away. Hit that subscribe button, because what comes next is going to break your heart before it puts it back together. The truth was waiting for me in Iris's handwriting. And it was so much worse than I ever imagined. The letter in Iris's handwriting was 3 pages long, but it contained enough truth to rewrite my entire existence. My dearest Silas. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I can only pray that Harlan has shown you more kindness than I fear he will. There are things I should have told you years ago. Things I was too much of a coward to say while I was alive. My hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled, but I forced myself to keep reading. You were never a foster child we randomly chose, sweetheart. You were never a charity case. Your birth father was Senator Thomas Brennan. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thomas Brennan. I knew that name. Everyone in Virginia politics knew that name. Senator Thomas Brennan had died in a scandal when I was 6 years old, accusations of financial misconduct, a smear campaign that destroyed his career, his reputation, his life. He died by suicide 3 months after the allegations broke. I'd heard Harlan mention him exactly once, years ago, his voice dripping with contempt. Thomas Brennan was a fool who didn't understand how power actually works. Thomas was Harlan's political rival, Iris's letter continued. They were both rising stars in Virginia politics. Both positioning themselves for a Senate run. But Thomas was different. He actually believed in public service, in integrity. He was going to win, Silas. Everyone knew it. So Harlan destroyed him. He fabricated evidence of financial crimes. He planted stories in the press. He systematically dismantled everything Thomas had built. And when Thomas couldn't take it anymore, when the weight of the lies became too much, he took his own life. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. Your birth mother was named Rachel. She was Thomas's aide, and they fell in love during his campaign. When she got pregnant with you, they were planning to get married after the election. But then Harlan's smear campaign began. Thomas spiraled. And 3 months after you were born, he was dead. Rachel was drowning in grief and debt from Thomas's legal battles. She was 23 years old, alone, and terrified. She surrendered you to foster care because she thought it would give you a better life than she could. She died 2 years later. Overdose. The official report said accidental, but I've always wondered. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and fast, but I couldn't stop reading. When Harlan found out Thomas Brennan's son was in the foster system, he saw an opportunity. He could adopt you, control the narrative, bury the Brennan name under the Crowe legacy. He could turn his greatest rival's son into his charity project, proof of the Crowe family's generosity and moral superiority. It was never about love, Silas. It was about power. I went along with it. God forgive me, I went along with it because I was weak, because I wanted to believe we could give you a good life, because I told myself it was better than leaving you in foster care. But I watched Harlan treat you like a trophy for 21 years. I watched him make sure you never felt like you belonged. I watched Sterling learn cruelty at his father's knee. And I said nothing. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so deeply, unforgivably sorry. The letter went on to give me practical details, a key to a safety deposit box hidden in her jewelry box, account numbers, the name of a lawyer who'd held onto evidence of Harlan's crimes against my father. Your father left you a trust fund. $2 million. Harlan had it frozen through legal manipulation, claimed Thomas's estate was under investigation. It's been sitting there for 22 years. I've left you everything you need to access it. To reclaim what's yours. But more than that, I've left you the truth. You are Thomas Brennan's son. You come from a man who believed in integrity, who fought for people who had no voice, who loved you even though he never got to meet you. You were never the problem, Silas. We were. The letter ended with a single line that broke me completely. I loved you the only way I knew how. I just wish I'd been brave enough to love you the way you deserved. Iris. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor of my childhood bedroom, surrounded by letters and lies. Everything I believed about myself was fiction. I wasn't a random foster kid given a second chance. I was the son of the man Harlan had destroyed. I was a trophy. A political statement. A living reminder that Harlan Crowe always won. Every perfect grade, every award, every desperate attempt to earn my place, all of it had been meaningless. Harlan was never going to love me. Because every time he looked at me, he saw Thomas Brennan. And Thomas Brennan was the man he'd murdered with lies. The grief came first, a howling, bottomless ache for the father I never knew, for the mother who'd loved me enough to let me go, for Iris who'd loved me but not enough to tell me the truth. Then came the rage. It burned through me like wildfire, hot and vicious. I wanted to storm downstairs and confront Harlan. I wanted to scream at Sterling. I wanted to destroy everything they'd built the way they'd destroyed my father. But underneath the rage was something worse. Numbness. A cold, hollow understanding that none of it mattered. Harlan had already won. He'd taken everything from my father, and then he'd taken everything from me, including the truth of who I was. What could I possibly do to a man who'd already gotten away with destroying 2 lives? I packed my things in silence. It didn't take long. 21 years in this house, and everything I actually owned fit in 2 boxes. Clothes. Books. The letters from Iris. The key to the safety deposit box. I left behind the Crowe name, the bedroom, the illusion that I'd ever belonged here. At the door, I ran into Cora. She was standing in the hallway, her eyes red like she'd been crying. Silas, she started. Don't, I said quietly. He's wrong. You know that, right? You're family. You've always been. I was never family, Cora. I was a trophy. She flinched. Where will you go? I looked at her, this woman who'd been kind but never brave, who'd loved me but never defended me. Somewhere I don't have to earn the right to exist. I walked out of Crowe Manor on a cold March evening with 2 boxes, a shattered heart, and a truth I didn't know what to do with. I didn't look back. Behind me, the house glowed with warm light, full of people who would sleep soundly tonight, unburdened by guilt or grief. And ahead of me was nothing but darkness and the terrifying question. Who was I, if I wasn't trying to be a Crowe? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I was about to find out. I crashed on my college roommate's couch in a cramped Adams Morgan apartment that smelled like old takeout and broken dreams. Marcus, yeah, that was his name, was a good guy. Good enough not to ask too many questions when I showed up at his door at midnight with 2 boxes and a face that probably said everything he needed to know. Stay as long as you need, man, he'd said, tossing me a blanket that had seen better days. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of staring at cracks in the ceiling at 4 a.m., wondering who the hell I was supposed to be now. 3 weeks of avoiding the safety deposit box key that sat in my pocket like a lead weight. 3 weeks of pretending I was fine. I wasn't fine. Washington, D.C. is a city built on power, and when you don't have any, it chews you up and spits you out with efficiency that's almost beautiful. I needed money. The small savings I had from my graduate assistantship was evaporating fast, and I couldn't keep freeloading off Marcus forever. So I did what every overeducated, underemployed person in D.C. does when they're desperate. I joined a catering company. Capital Elite Events. They staffed high-end political functions, charity galas, embassy dinners, all the glittering parties where powerful people made deals over champagne and pretended to care about causes they'd forget by morning. I was good at being invisible. 21 years with the Crowes had taught me that skill perfectly. Show up. Smile politely. Serve the drinks. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak unless spoken to. Disappear into the background like you were never there at all. It was humiliating. I had a master's degree in public policy from Georgetown. I'd published research on economic inequality. I'd been offered positions at think tanks and consulting firms. But all of that had been when I was Silas Crowe, adopted son of Harlan Crowe, connected to one of Virginia's most powerful families. Now I was just Silas Brennan. Nobody. The son of a dead man whose name was still whispered with pity and contempt in the circles I now served drinks to. I told myself it didn't matter. That I was just figuring things out. That this was temporary. But every night, when I came back to Marcus's couch smelling like other people's expensive food and cheap labor, I felt myself disappearing a little more. The key to the safety deposit box sat on the coffee table. Marcus had asked about it once. You gonna open whatever that goes to? Eventually, I'd said. But I didn't. Because opening it meant facing everything Iris had written. Everything about my father, about Harlan's crimes, about the money that was supposedly mine. And I wasn't ready. What if the trust fund was gone? What if Harlan had found a way to take that too? What if I opened that box and found out that even my father's last gift to me had been stolen? I couldn't handle another loss. Not yet. So I worked. I stayed numb. I ignored Cora's calls. She'd tried reaching out 17 times in 3 weeks. Texts, voicemails, even a handwritten letter delivered to Marcus's apartment. I had no idea how she'd found the address. Silas, please. We need to talk. What Harlan did isn't right. I want to help. I deleted every message. Help? Where was her help when Harlan told me to leave? Where was her help during 21 years of being treated like I was on probation in my own family? Cora was kind. But kindness without courage is just cowardice with better manners. I wanted nothing to do with any of them. But D.C. is a small town when you're in certain circles, and I couldn't avoid the Crowe name even when I tried. 2 weeks into my new life as invisible catering staff, I was working a reception at the Smithsonian when I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. Have you gotten your invitation to the Crowe Foundation Gala yet? Of course. Wouldn't miss it. I heard they're doing it as a tribute to Iris. Very touching. Harlan really knows how to turn tragedy into good press, doesn't he? I nearly dropped the tray of glasses I was holding. The Crowe Foundation Gala. Iris had been planning it before she died, her passion project, an annual fundraiser for foster care reform and adoption services. The irony wasn't lost on me. And now Harlan was using her death, using the foundation she'd built, to burnish his own image. I felt the rage bubble up again, hot and bitter. But what could I do? Storm the gala and tell everyone the truth? That Harlan Crowe had destroyed my father and adopted me as a PR move? Who would believe me? The nobody in the server's uniform versus one of the most powerful men in Virginia? I'd be laughed out of the room. So I swallowed the anger and kept serving drinks. That night, I came home to find Marcus waiting up for me. "Man, you can't keep going like this," he said quietly. "Like what?" "Like a ghost. You don't eat. You don't sleep. You just work and stare at walls." He gestured at the key on the table. "Whatever you're avoiding, it's eating you alive." "I'm fine. You're not fine. And I'm worried about you." I wanted to snap at him. To tell him he didn't understand, that he couldn't possibly understand what it felt like to discover your entire life was a lie. But Marcus had let me crash on his couch for 3 weeks without asking for rent. He'd shared his food. He'd given me space and kindness when I had nothing. He deserved better than my anger. "I know," I said finally. I need time." He nodded. "Take the time. But don't take so long you forget you're still alive." That night, I lay awake on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Don't take so long you forget you're still alive. Was I still alive? Or had I died the night I walked out of Crowe Manor, and I just hadn't noticed yet? I didn't know. But I knew I couldn't keep going like this, numb, hollow, stuck between a past that had rejected me and a future I was too afraid to reach for. Something had to change. I just didn't know what. Not yet. But the universe, as it turns out, was about to decide for me. The job came through on a Thursday. Capital Elite Events sent out a mass text, "Private event in Georgetown." Saturday evening. Formal attire. $200 for 4 hours. I took it without reading the details. $200 meant I could give Marcus something for rent. It meant I could stop feeling like a parasite living off someone else's generosity. It meant I could pretend I had some control over my life. I showed up at the Georgetown address at 5 p.m. sharp, wearing the white shirt and black slacks that had become my uniform for invisibility. The house was stunning, a historic townhouse with brick facade and gas lamps, the kind of place that whispered old money and older power. Inside, everything was elegant and understated. Small gathering. Maybe 40 people. Classical music drifted through rooms filled with people in expensive suits and designer dresses. Political crowd. I could tell from the way they stood, the way they spoke in that careful language where every word was calculated. I fell into my role easily. Circulating with trays of hors d'oeuvres. Refilling wine glasses. Being present but not visible. And then I saw her. She was sitting alone in the library, away from the main gathering. Dark hair pulled back simply. Navy dress that was elegant without trying. No jewelry except a simple watch. But it wasn't what she wore that made me stop. It was the look on her face. She looked exhausted. Not physically tired, but soul-deep weary. Like she'd been holding something heavy for too long and didn't know how to put it down. I knew that look. I'd been seeing it in the mirror for 3 weeks. She glanced up and caught me staring. I should have looked away. Should have moved on to the next guest. Instead, I walked over. "Can I get you anything?" I asked quietly. She studied me for a moment with eyes that were too intelligent, too sharp. "You're not supposed to be working this event, are you?" she said. I blinked. "I'm with the catering company." "That's not what I meant." She gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Sit." "I can't. I'm working." "I'm telling you to sit." "So technically, you're still working." There was something in her voice, not command, but invitation. Like she was as tired of the performance as I was. I sat. We looked at each other for a long moment. "You don't want to be here," she said finally. "Does anyone actually want to be at these things?" A small smile touched her lips. Fair point. She extended her hand. Vivienne. Silas. Her handshake was firm, warm. When she let go, I felt the absence of it. So why are you here, Silas? And don't say the catering company. I mean really here. In D.C. serving drinks at parties you're overqualified for. I should have deflected. Should have given some polite non-answer. But there was something about her, about the way she'd looked just as lost as I felt, that made me tell the truth. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else. She went still. Then she nodded slowly. Yeah. I know that feeling. Your turn. Why are you hiding in here instead of networking out there? Because out there, everyone wants something from me. And I'm tired of being what people need instead of just being. The honesty in her voice was startling. We sat in silence for a moment, and it wasn't awkward. It was the first comfortable silence I'd experienced in weeks. My father died 2 months ago, she said suddenly. Everyone keeps telling me how strong I am. How well I'm handling it. How proud he'd be of the way I'm managing his legacy. But you don't feel strong. I feel like I'm drowning. And everyone's so busy congratulating me on my swimming technique that no one notices I'm going under. I understood that completely. I lost someone too, I said quietly. The only person who ever really saw me. And now I'm realizing that maybe she didn't see me as clearly as I thought. Or maybe she did, and she just didn't know how to tell me the truth. Vivienne leaned forward slightly. What truth? I don't know why I told her. This stranger. This woman whose last name I didn't even know. Maybe because she was a stranger. Because there was no history, no expectation, no performance required. That everything I thought I was built on lies. She held my gaze. So who are you now? I don't know yet. Good. I looked at her, surprised. People who think they know exactly who they are usually haven't looked hard enough, she said. At least you're honest about the uncertainty. Someone called her name from the other room. Vivienne. There you are. The senator wants to introduce you. She closed her eyes briefly, and I saw that exhaustion again. I have to go, she said, standing. Back to being what people need? Something like that. She paused at the door, then turned back. This might be inappropriate, but would you want to get coffee sometime? Somewhere that's not a political event where we both have to pretend? My heart did something unexpected. It beat a little faster. I'm just a server, I said. You're, whoever you are out there. Out there, I'm Vivienne Armitage's daughter. In here, I'm just Vivienne. Someone who met someone interesting and wants to have a conversation that doesn't involve condolences or career networking. Vivienne Armitage. The name hit me like cold water. Senator Vivienne Armitage. One of the most legendary political figures in modern D.C. history. He died 2 months ago, heart attack, the news had said. The entire Capitol had mourned. And I'd just been sitting in a library, talking about grief and identity with his daughter. She must have seen something change in my face because she smiled sadly. And there it is. The moment you remember who I'm supposed to be. No, It's fine. I'm used to it. She started to leave. Wednesday, I said suddenly. There's a coffee shop in DuPont Circle. Busboys and poets. 10 a.m. She turned, surprised. You're Vivienne, I continued. I'm Silas. Everything else is just noise. For the first time that evening, her smile reached her eyes. Wednesday. 10 a.m. She left. And I sat there in that library, holding an empty tray, feeling something I hadn't felt in 3 weeks. Hope. Wednesday morning, I woke up on Marcus's couch and realized I couldn't meet Vivienne carrying all these lies. Not the lies I told her. I'd been more honest with her in that library than I'd been with anyone in years. But the lies I was still telling myself. The lies that said I didn't need to know what was in that safety deposit box. That I could just move forward without looking back. That the past didn't matter. It mattered. If I was going to figure out who Silas Brennan actually was, I needed to know who Thomas Brennan had been. The bank was in Arlington, a small branch Iris had chosen specifically because it was far from anywhere the Crowes did business. I stood outside for 10 minutes, key in hand, trying to make my feet move. A woman leaving the bank held the door for me. "You coming in, honey?" I nodded and walked inside before I could change my mind. The safety deposit box was small. Number 447. The bank employee, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, led me to the private room and left me alone with whatever my father had left behind. My hands shook as I turned the key. Inside the box, a manila envelope, a smaller jewelry box, and a leather journal worn soft with age. I opened the envelope first. Documents. Legal papers outlining the trust fund, $2.3 million, frozen since my father's death, held in legal limbo by motions Harlan's lawyers had filed claiming the estate was under investigation. But there was also a letter from a lawyer named Patricia Chen, dated 3 months ago. "Mr. Brennan. If you're reading this, then Iris Crowe has passed, and you've finally been given access to the information she asked me to hold. I represented your father during the final months of his life. The charges against him were fabricated. I have evidence, emails, financial records, testimony from a whistleblower in Harlan Crowe's organization, that prove the allegations were manufactured. Your father knew the truth would eventually come out, but he also knew fighting it would destroy you. You were 6 months old. He didn't want you growing up in the shadow of a court battle that would drag on for years. So he stopped fighting. He made arrangements for your future, and then he gave up. I've held onto this evidence for 22 years, waiting. Iris contacted me 6 months before her death and asked me to prepare everything for you. The statute of limitations has passed on prosecuting Harlan Crowe. But the truth doesn't have an expiration date. If you want to pursue unlocking your trust fund and clearing your father's name, I'm ready to help. The choice is yours." I sat there, staring at the letter, feeling something crack open inside my chest. My father had known he was innocent. And he'd sacrificed himself anyway to protect me. I opened the jewelry box next. Inside was a man's watch. Simple, elegant. The back was engraved, "To Thomas, for always knowing what time it is. Love, Rachel." My mother's handwriting, presumably. A private joke I'd never understand. I strapped it onto my wrist. It fit perfectly. Then I opened the journal. The first entry was dated 2 weeks after I was born. March 15th. Silas smiled today. Rachel says it's probably just gas, but I swear he was smiling at me. Like he already knows I'm his dad and he's decided I'm acceptable. I held him for an hour this morning while Rachel slept. He's so small. I keep thinking about all the things I want to teach him, show him, tell him. I want him to know that power without integrity is just tyranny. That being smart isn't enough, you have to be kind. I want him to grow up knowing he's loved. I couldn't read anymore. The tears were coming too fast. But I kept turning pages, glimpsing pieces of a man I'd never known. A man who'd taken me to the park. Who'd read to me at night. Who'd worried about being a good father. A man Harlan Crowe had destroyed with lies. By the time I left the bank, I was carrying a weight I didn't know how to hold. I met Vivienne at Busboys and Poets at 10 a.m. She was already there, sitting by the window with 2 coffees. I took a guess, she said, sliding one across the table. Black, no sugar. How'd you know? You seem like someone who doesn't like things complicated. She was wrong, but I appreciated the gesture. We talked for an hour about nothing important. Books. Music. The absurdity of D.C. traffic. But I could feel the weight of the journal in my bag. The truth pressing against my ribs. Finally, she set down her coffee and looked at me directly. What happened, Silas? What do you mean? Since Saturday. Something changed. I can see it on your face. I should have deflected. Should have kept my secrets. But I was so tired of carrying them alone. Can I tell you something? I asked. Something that might change the way you see me? Try me. So I told her. Everything. About being adopted by the Crowes. About Iris dying and Harlan throwing me out. About the letter that revealed my father was Thomas Brennan and the whole adoption had been a power play. About the safety deposit box I'd opened that morning, and the man I'd discovered in those pages. Vivienne listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, I waited for the pity. Or worse, the discomfort. The look that said I'd shared too much too soon. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. Your father was Thomas Brennan, she said quietly. You knew him? My father did. They worked together on campaign finance reform. Dad always said Thomas was one of the few people in D.C. who actually gave a damn about doing the right thing. She squeezed my hand. He also said Thomas's death was suspicious. That the charges never made sense. But he could never prove anything. I stared at her. Harlan Crowe destroyed a good man, Vivienne continued, and her voice had an edge now. And then he adopted that man's son as a trophy. That's not just cruel, Silas. That's sociopathic. I don't know what to do with it, I admitted. The lawyer says I can fight to unlock the trust fund, maybe clear his name. But what's the point? Everyone who matters already believes the lies. Not everyone. The statute of limitations has passed. Harlan gets away with it no matter what. Vivienne's eyes were fierce now. Legal consequences aren't the only kind that matter. You want to know what I think? What? I think your father left you that evidence because he knew someday you'd be strong enough to use it. Not for revenge. For truth. I'm not strong. You walked away from the only family you've ever known because you refused to keep living a lie. You're stronger than you think. We sat in that coffee shop until they started setting up for lunch, and for the first time since Iris died, I didn't feel alone. When we finally left, Vivienne turned to me on the sidewalk. I want to help you, she said. If you'll let me. Why? Because you deserve someone in your corner. And because, she hesitated, then smiled. Because I haven't felt this human around another person in a very long time. I kissed her. I didn't plan it. Didn't think about it. I just leaned in and kissed her, and she kissed me back, and the whole broken world felt a little less impossible. When we pulled apart, she was smiling. Wednesday mornings are my new favorite thing, she said. Mine too. The next 3 weeks changed everything. Vivienne and I fell into a rhythm that felt like breathing, natural, necessary, life-sustaining. Wednesday morning coffee became every morning coffee. Then breakfast. Then long walks along the National Mall where we talked about everything and nothing. She told me about her father, Vivienne Armitage, the legendary senator who'd been larger than life in public and quietly heartbroken in private after her mother died. He raised me alone, she said one afternoon as we sat on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Taught me that power is a responsibility, not a privilege. That if you have influence, you use it to protect people who don't. Sounds like he was a good man. He was. But he was also lonely. I think he poured everything into his work because it hurt less than admitting how much he missed her. She looked at me. I'm terrified I'm doing the same thing. Staying busy so I don't have to feel how much I miss him. I took her hand. You're allowed to miss him. You're allowed to be sad. Everyone keeps telling me to be strong. Being sad doesn't make you weak. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat there watching tourists take photos, just being quiet together. Those moments, the quiet ones, were when I felt most alive. Vivienne's Georgetown townhouse became a refuge. She'd inherited it from her father, and it still had his books on the shelves, his reading glasses on the desk, his presence in every room. I can't bring myself to pack his things, she admitted one evening as we cooked dinner together. It feels like erasing him. Maybe you're not supposed to pack them yet. When did you become wise? I'm not wise. I'm just familiar with grief that doesn't follow a timeline. She kissed me then, soft and slow, and I felt something in my chest, and not just a little. We cooked together often after that. Simple meals. Pasta. Stir fry. Once, an ambitious curry that turned out terrible and made us laugh until we cried. I hadn't laughed like that in months. Tell me something, Vivienne said one night as we sat on her couch, my head in her lap, her fingers running through my hair. If you could have anything, not money, not revenge, just anything, what would it be? I thought about it. I'd want them to see me, I said finally. Just once. I'd want Harlan and Sterling to look at me and actually see who I am instead of who they decided I was when I was 7 years old. And who are you? I'm still figuring that out. But I know I'm not what they thought. I'm not less than them. I'm not a charity case or a trophy or a mistake. I looked up at her. I'm Thomas Brennan's son. And he was a good man. Her eyes were bright. Yes, he was. And so are you. I'm not. You are, Silas. You're kind. You're honest. You're brave enough to walk away from people who hurt you, even when it would be easier to stay and keep pretending. I don't feel brave. Bravery isn't not being scared. It's being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. I pulled her down and kissed her, and it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. One Saturday morning, I woke up in Vivienne's guest room. I'd been staying there more than at Marcus's couch, and found her sitting at her father's desk, surrounded by papers. What's all this? I asked. Research. She looked up, and there was something fierce in her expression. I've been making calls. Talking to people my father worked with. Lawyers, investigators, journalists who covered your father's case. Vivienne. 3 separate people told me the same thing. They never believed the charges against Thomas Brennan. The evidence was too convenient. The timeline too perfect. But no one could prove it because Harlan's lawyers buried everything. I sat down across from her. The statute of limitations has passed. Even if we prove it, nothing happens to Harlan. Legal consequences aren't the only kind that matter, she repeated what she'd said weeks ago. Harlan Crowe's power comes from his reputation. From being seen as a pillar of the community. A philanthropist. A family man. What are you saying? I'm saying the truth is a weapon, Silas. And you have a choice about whether to use it. I looked at the papers spread across the desk. Documents. Timelines. Evidence. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. I know. But what do you want? I thought about the question she'd asked me on the couch. About being seen. The Crowe Foundation gala is in 2 weeks, I said slowly. I know. I got an invitation. Of course you did. The Armitage name would be on every A-list in Washington. An idea was forming. Dangerous. Terrifying. But also, right. Cora reached out to me again yesterday, I continued. She wants me to come to the gala. Says there's something of Iris's she wants to give me. Something Harlan doesn't know about. You think it's a trap? Maybe. But I also think Cora is the only one in that family with a conscience. I met Vivienne's eyes. What if I went? As a guest? No. I can't get in as a guest. But I'm still on the catering company's roster. Understanding dawned on her face. You want to go as staff? I want to walk back into that house one more time. Not as the adopted son begging for scraps. Just as someone passing through. And I want to get whatever Iris left for me. And then I walk away. For good. Vivienne was quiet for a long moment. What if you didn't have to go as staff, she said finally. What do you mean? What if you went as my guest? As my partner? My heart stopped. Vivienne, the Crowes would never. The Crowes don't control the guest list for the entire gala. Just their section. And I can bring whoever I want. Her smile was small but fierce. Besides, I've been meaning to RSVP. And I never go to these things alone. You do that? Silas. She took my hands. I'd do a lot more than that. If you'd let me. Have you ever had someone come into your life right when you needed them most? Someone who saw you when you felt invisible. Drop a comment and tell me about it, because sometimes the people who save us are the ones we never saw coming. For the first time since leaving Crowe Manor, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was living. And maybe, just maybe, I was beginning to understand what it felt like to be loved, not for who I was trying to be, but for who I actually was. It felt like hope. It felt like home. But I didn't know yet that in 2 weeks, everything would change. That Vivienne had plans bigger than just being my date to a gala. That sometimes, being seen means standing in front of everyone who tried to erase you, and refusing to disappear. I found out about the president 3 days before the gala. Not from Vivienne. From a phone call I wasn't supposed to overhear. I'd come back to her townhouse early from a catering job. She didn't know I was there. I'd used the key she'd given me the week before, the gesture that had made me feel like I finally belonged somewhere. I was about to call out to her when I heard her voice from the study, low and intense. Adrian, I know what I'm asking. But he deserves this. No, he doesn't know yet. Because if I tell him, he'll say no. He'll say it's too much, that he doesn't want to make it a spectacle. I understand the optics, but this isn't about politics. This is about justice. I stood frozen in the hallway. Adrian. President Adrian Vale. Vivienne was talking to the President of the United States. About me. The gala is Saturday, Vivienne continued. If you could just make an appearance, shake his hand, acknowledge Thomas Brennan's legacy publicly, it would mean everything. Yes, I know I'm calling in a favor. A big one. But you owed my father, and I'm cashing in that debt now. My stomach turned to ice. Thank you, Adrian. I mean it. I'll handle Silas. He'll understand once it happens. I have to go. See you Saturday. The call ended. I stood there, hands still on my back, trying to process what I'd just heard. Vivienne walked out of the study and nearly ran into me. Silas. I didn't hear you come in. Her smile was bright, genuine. How was the job? What's happening Saturday? My voice came out flat. Her smile faltered. What do you mean? I heard you on the phone. With President Vale. The color drained from her face. Silas. You called in a favor. To get the president to come to the gala. To acknowledge my father publicly. I stepped back. What the hell, Vivienne? Let me explain. Explain what? That you've been planning some kind of, what? Public spectacle? Without even asking me? It's not a spectacle. It's justice. Your father deserves to have his name cleared. That's not your decision to make. The words came out louder than I intended, and Vivienne flinched. You're right, she said quietly. I should have told you. But I knew if I asked, you'd say no. Exactly. So you just went behind my back and orchestrated this whole thing like I'm some kind of project? You're not a project. Really? Because that's exactly what this feels like. Poor Silas, the charity case who needs to be rescued by the powerful woman with all the connections. The bitterness in my voice was acid. I've been someone's project before, Vivienne. I won't do it again. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've been making calls, doing research, pulling strings, all without asking me what I actually want. You said you wanted them to see you. Her voice rose now, matching my anger. You said you wanted Harlan and Sterling to know who you really are. That's what I'm trying to give you. I wanted to do it on my own terms. Not because you called in political favors and staged some kind of public redemption arc. So what, you were just going to show up as catering staff and hope Cora gave you closure? That was your plan? Yes. Because it was my plan. My choice. My life. Vivienne's eyes were bright with tears now. I was trying to help you. I didn't ask you to save me. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and cruel. Is that what you think I'm doing? Her voice was barely a whisper. Saving you? What else would you call it? You swoop into my life with your connections and your resources and your father's legacy, and you fix everything like I'm some broken thing that needs repair. You're not broken, Silas. You're hurt. There's a difference. Then why can't you just let me handle this myself? Because you don't have to handle it alone anymore. She was crying now, openly. I love you. I'm in love with you. And when you love someone, you fight for them. You use whatever power you have to protect them. The words should have made me feel something. They should have softened the rage. But all I could feel was the weight of being someone's responsibility again. I don't want to be fought for, I said coldly. I want to be trusted to fight my own battles. So I'm supposed to just stand by and do nothing while the family that destroyed your father gets to celebrate their philanthropy? If that's what I choose, yes. That's not love, Silas. That's abandonment. No, Vivienne. Love is respecting someone enough to let them make their own decisions. Even the ones you don't agree with. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. I can't watch you walk back into that house and let them treat you like you're invisible, she said finally. I can't stand by and pretend that's okay. Then I guess you don't have to watch. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Silas, wait. I need space. I need to think. Don't do this. Don't walk away. We can figure this out. You already figured it out. Without me. I opened the door. Maybe that's the problem. I love you, she said, her voice breaking. I stopped but didn't turn around. I know you do. But I don't think you understand that loving someone means trusting them to be strong enough to handle their own life. And I don't think you understand that being strong enough to ask for help isn't weakness. I left. Closed the door behind me and walked out into the cold November evening. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from Vivienne. Please don't go to the gala alone. Please. We can cancel everything. Just talk to me. I turned off my phone. I walked back to Marcus's apartment, because Vivienne's townhouse had never really been mine, had it? I'd just been borrowing space in her life, like I'd borrowed space with the Crowes. Always temporary. Always conditional. Always someone else's charity. Marcus took one look at my face and handed me a beer without asking questions. That night, I lay awake on his couch and stared at the ceiling. In 3 days, the Crowe Foundation Gala would happen. The President of the United States would apparently be there, ready to publicly acknowledge my father's legacy, because Vivienne had orchestrated it. And I had no idea what I was going to do. Go and let Vivienne's plan unfold? Prove her right that I needed her to save me? Or stay away and prove to myself that I didn't need anyone? Both options felt like losing. I'd finally let someone in. Finally trusted someone with the broken parts of myself. And now I was alone again. Just like always. For 2 days, I did nothing. Just existed in the gray space between rage and regret, replaying the fight in my head until the words lost meaning. Marcus didn't push. He just made sure I ate, left me alone when I needed it, and occasionally reminded me that his couch wasn't a permanent life plan. Friday morning, the day before the gala, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 12 from Vivienne. 5 from a number I didn't recognize. And 1 voicemail from Crowe. Her voice was urgent, shaking. Silas, please call me back. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to see you before tomorrow night. It's about Mom. About what she left for you. Harlan found something, and he's planning, static. Just please. Meet me at Meridian Hill Park. 2 p.m. today. Please. I stared at my phone. Every instinct I had screamed that it was a trap. That Crowe was still a Crowe, still loyal to Harlan, still someone who'd chosen silence over standing up for what was right. But there was something in her voice. Fear. Real fear. I texted back, I'll be there. Meridian Hill Park was nearly empty when I arrived. Crowe was sitting on a bench near the cascading fountain, wearing jeans and a jacket that looked nothing like the designer clothes she usually wore to Crowe family events. She looked small. Tired. Human. She stood when she saw me. You came. You sounded scared. I am scared. She glanced around like she expected Harlan to materialize from the trees. I shouldn't be here. If Sterling finds out I contacted you. What's going on, Crowe? She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed. My name written in Iris's handwriting. Mom gave this to me 3 weeks before she died. Made me promise to give it to you at the gala. She said it was important that you had it that night, in that place. Crowe's hands were shaking. But Harlan's been going through Mom's things. I think he suspects she left you something that could hurt him. I took the envelope. It was sealed. What is it? I don't know. She wouldn't tell me. But she said it was the truth you deserved. Crowe's eyes were wet. Silas, I'm sorry. For everything. For not standing up to him. For being too afraid to defend you. You deserved better from me. Why now? Why are you suddenly growing a conscience? She flinched, but she didn't look away. Because watching you leave that house was the first time I realized how much I'd become like them. And I don't want to be that person anymore. We stood there in the cold November wind, 2 people raised by the same poison, trying to figure out how not to be toxic. What are you going to do? She asked quietly. Tomorrow night? I don't know. Your girlfriend, Vivienne Armitage, she called the house. Spoke to Harlan about making a donation to the foundation. Crowe's smile was sad. He has no idea who she is to you. No idea what's coming. There might not be anything coming. We had a fight. About tomorrow? About everything. I looked at the envelope in my hands. She made plans without telling me. Big plans. And I felt like I was being controlled again. Cora was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something Mom said to me once? What? She said the difference between being controlled and being loved is intention. Control is about the person doing it, their need for power. Love is about the person receiving it, their need for support. She met my eyes. What was Vivienne's intention? I thought about it. About Vivienne sitting at her father's desk, making calls, doing research. The fierce look in her eyes when she talked about justice for my father. About the way she'd held me when I cried. The way she'd listened without judgment. The way she'd offered partnership, not pity. She was trying to protect me, I said quietly. Then maybe she wasn't trying to control you. Maybe she was just loving you the only way she knew how. The words hit something deep in my chest. I told her I didn't need to be saved, I whispered. Did you mean it? I don't know. Maybe I do need help. Maybe I've been so afraid of being someone's charity case again that I can't tell the difference between being used and being loved. Cora squeezed my shoulder. For what it's worth, the way she talked about you on the phone, that wasn't someone managing a project. That was someone who'd go to war for you. After Cora left, I sat alone on that bench and opened Iris's envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. A photocopy of a handwritten note. My father's handwriting, based on the journal I'd read. Dated 3 weeks before he died. To whoever finds this. My son, Silas, is innocent of his father's failures. Whatever you believe about me, whatever the papers say, whatever Harlan Crowe has convinced you is true, my son deserves a life free from this shadow. If something happens to me, please make sure he knows, he was loved. Completely. Unconditionally. His mother and I wanted him more than anything in this world. And if the truth ever comes out about what really happened, I hope he'll understand why I stopped fighting. It wasn't because I was guilty. It was because protecting him mattered more than protecting my reputation. He is my legacy. Not my career. Not my name. Him. Make sure he knows. I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. My father had known. Even at the end, facing complete destruction, he'd been thinking about me. Protecting me. Loving me. And I'd spent 2 days pushing away the woman who was trying to do the same thing. I pulled out my phone and stared at Vivienne's name. 12 missed calls. 6 voicemails I hadn't listened to. I played the most recent one. Her voice was raw, exhausted. Silas, I canceled everything. The president isn't coming. I called Adrian and told her I was wrong to ask. You were right, it wasn't my choice to make. A shaky breath. I couldn't stand the thought of you going back into that house and feeling invisible again. But I understand if you need to do this your way. I understand if you don't want me there. A long pause. I love you. That's not conditional on you needing me or letting me fix things or being anything other than exactly who you are. I'm sorry I made you feel otherwise. I'm so sorry. The message ended. I sat there holding my phone, my father's note, and the weight of a choice I'd been avoiding. Did I want to face the Crowes alone? Prove I didn't need anyone? Or did I want to walk in there with someone who loved me, not because I was broken, but because I was worth fighting for? The sun was setting over Washington. Tomorrow night, Harlan Crowe would stand in front of hundreds of people and accept praise for his philanthropy. He'd tell stories about Iris's charity work. He'd pretend to be a good man. And I had to decide, did I let him? Or did I finally step out of the shadows and let myself be seen? Not as a charity case. Not as someone's project. As Thomas Brennan's son. As Silas Brennan. As someone worthy of love, justice, and truth. I dialed Vivienne's number. She answered on the first ring. Silas? I'm sorry, I said. You were trying to love me, and I was too scared to see it. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. You were right. I do want them to see me. And I don't want to do it alone. Silence. Then her voice, thick with tears. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. And if the offer still stands, I'd like to go to the gala tomorrow. As your partner. As your guest. Silas. And I'm saying I trust you. Whatever you had planned, whatever you think needs to happen, I trust you. I canceled the president. Then we'll figure out something else. Together. I heard her breath catch. Together, she whispered. Yeah. Together. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 6. I'll be ready. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Because I'd finally made a choice. Not to stand alone. But to stand with someone who saw me. And that made all the difference. Saturday evening, Vivienne picked me up in a black town car. When I opened the door and saw her, my breath caught. She wore a deep emerald dress, elegant and understated. But it wasn't the dress that stopped me. It was the way she looked at me, like I was the only person in the world who mattered. You look perfect, she said. I glanced down at the suit she'd had delivered to Marcus's apartment that afternoon. Tailored, expensive, nothing like the server's uniform I'd planned to wear. I feel like an imposter. You're Thomas Brennan's son walking into a room full of people who forgot him. You're not an imposter. You're exactly where you belong. She took my hand. Ready? No. But I nodded anyway. Crowe Manor was blazing with light when we pulled up. Luxury cars lined the circular drive. Guests in evening wear climbed the marble steps. A photographer captured arrivals. My hands were shaking. Vivienne squeezed them. We can leave right now if you want. Just say the word. No. I need to do this. Then let's do it together. We stepped out of the car, and I felt the weight of 100 eyes turned toward us. Toward Vivienne Armitage, Washington royalty, daughter of a legend. And toward me. The man no one recognized. We walked through the front doors, and I was back in the house I'd fled 6 months ago. Nothing had changed. Same marble floors. Same crystal chandeliers. Same cold elegance that had never felt like home. A server offered us champagne. I took a glass with shaking hands, and the irony wasn't lost on me. 3 weeks ago, I would have been the one holding the tray. Silas? I turned. Cora stood there in a silver dress, her eyes wide. You came. I came. She looked at Vivienne, then back at me, and something like relief crossed her face. Good. I'm glad. She hesitated. He's in the ballroom. Giving his speech in 20 minutes. I know. She squeezed my arm once, then disappeared into the crowd. Vivienne and I moved through the room slowly. I saw people I recognized, senators, donors, society figures who'd attended Crowe events my entire childhood. Not one of them recognized me. I'd spent 21 years in this house, and I was still invisible to them. We reached the ballroom just as the lights dimmed. Harlan stood at the podium, distinguished and composed in his tuxedo. Sterling stood beside him, smug and confident. Good evening, Harlan began, his voice carrying across the room. Thank you all for joining us for the Crowe Foundation Gala. This year, We gather in memory of my beloved wife, Iris, whose passion for helping vulnerable children shaped this foundation's mission. My jaw clenched. Vivienne's hand found mine. Iris believed that every child deserved a chance, Harlan continued. She dedicated her life to supporting foster care reform and adoption services. Her legacy lives on through the work we do here. He was rewriting history, turning Iris's guilt into sainthood. In her honor, we've established a new scholarship fund for former foster youth pursuing higher education. How generous. The words came from my mouth before I could stop them. Not loud, but in the silence of Harlan's speech, they carried. Heads turned. Harlan's eyes found me in the crowd, and I watched recognition dawn slowly. Silas? His composure cracked, just slightly. I stepped forward, Vivienne beside me. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to hear how you'd talk about Iris's charity work. The foster child she adopted. I smiled, cold and sharp. Since I'm that foster child. And you threw me out the week after she died. The room went completely silent. Sterling's face went white. This isn't the time or place, Harlan started. No, I think it's exactly the time and place. You're accepting praise for helping vulnerable children while the son you adopted is standing here telling you that you used him as a political prop. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. You're upset, Harlan said, his voice carefully controlled. Grieving. But this is inappropriate. What's inappropriate is adopting your political rival's son so you could bury his legacy under your name. What's inappropriate is freezing a $2 million trust fund that Thomas Brennan left for me. What's inappropriate is building your reputation on lies. You have no proof. Actually, he does. Vivienne stepped forward, and suddenly she wasn't just the woman I loved. She was Vincent Armitage's daughter. Political royalty. Power personified. I have documentation, she said clearly. Financial records. Emails. Testimony from people in your organization. Everything proving you fabricated charges against Senator Thomas Brennan 22 years ago. Harlan's face went ashen. The statute of limitations has passed, Vivienne continued. You won't face legal consequences. But truth doesn't have an expiration date. And every person in this room is going to know exactly what you did. This is slander. The ballroom doors opened. And the Secret Service walked in. Everything stopped. My heart stopped. Because behind them, calm and composed in a navy suit, was President Adrian Vale. I turned to Vivienne. You said you canceled. I lied, she whispered. I called her back yesterday. Told her you were ready. The Secret Service agent approached us, and I heard his words as if from underwater. Sir, the President of the United States would like to personally meet you. Not Harlan. Not Sterling. Me. President Vale crossed the ballroom, and the crowd parted like water. She stopped in front of me and extended her hand. Silas Brennan. I knew your father. He was a good man and a true public servant. What happened to him was an injustice. She glanced at Harlan. And injustices have a way of coming to light. I shook her hand, too stunned to speak. She turned to the crowd. Thomas Brennan's legacy deserves to be honored. I'm formally requesting a Senate review of his case. And I'm personally ensuring his son receives the inheritance that was unlawfully frozen. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. And Harlan Crowe, powerful, untouchable Harlan Crowe, stood silent, destroyed not by law, but by truth. President Vale nodded to me once more, then left as efficiently as she'd arrived. The room erupted in whispers. Sterling had disappeared. Harlan stood alone at the podium, diminished. Cora appeared at my side. Mom would be proud of you, she whispered. Maybe she would. I turned to Vivienne. She was crying, smiling, radiant. You called her back, I said. I told you. I'd go to war for you. That was too much? Perfect. I pulled her close. You're perfect. We're perfect, she corrected. Together. What would you do if you finally got the justice you deserved? If the people who hurt you finally had to face the truth? Leave a comment below, because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well and being loved. 3 months later, I stood in Vivienne's townhouse, our townhouse now, reading the news on my tablet. Harlan Crowe steps down from Crowe Foundation amid scandal. Senate posthumously clears Thomas Brennan of all charges. Silas Brennan establishes scholarship fund in father's name. Vivienne wrapped her arms around me from behind. Any regrets? About what? Blowing up your adoptive family in front of 200 people and the president? I smiled. Not even a little. Good. Because I have something to tell you. I turned. What? She held up her hand. On her finger was the watch, my father's watch, that I'd been wearing the day we met. Attached to it was a ring. Vivienne. I'm not asking yet, she said quickly. I just wanted you to see what I'm planning. When you're ready. No pressure. No timeline. Just possibility. I kissed her, long and deep and full of everything I couldn't say. When we pulled apart, I whispered, I'm ready. Yeah? Yeah. She smiled, radiant. Then yes, Silas Brennan. Whenever you ask. The answer is yes. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn love. Trying to prove I was worthy. Trying to belong. But love, real love, isn't earned. It's given freely. And I'd finally found someone who saw me. All of me. Not as a charity case or a project or a broken thing to fix. Just as Silas. And that was more than enough. It was everything.